I just want to really feel and be in that moment. Very few people have seen Earth from this vantage point. We're going to come back with a completely new perspective.
Hey friends, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that strange chill in your chest, that quiet voice in your gut? When someone new walks in smiling just a little too wide, acting like they belong in your world, but deep down you know something is about to shift now. Imagine that world is $1 billion empire, and that someone is Sydney Sweeney and you are Lauren. Sanchez, the woman who went from the news desk to the stars, who held her own in a room full of power, who walked beside Jeff Bezos as he built rockets and reached for more, who danced to her Venice wedding while the world watched, stunned by the glamour, the grace, the gravity of her rise. But now that grace is being tested because sources say Lauren didn't see this one coming. Sydney Sweeney, the euphoria star with the soft gaze and business moves just sharp enough to cut, quietly landed something unexpected. Jeff Bezos' money, and not in some vague portfolio line. No, he invested directly in her lingerie brand. And that alone could have been a headline, but what turned heads, what made Lauren reportedly feel that sudden snap of surprise, was where it happened, how it happened, and who was watching, because Sydney didn't just pitch a startup, she showed up. At the wedding she toasted under Italian skies in a circle meant for the closest, the trusted, the known, and that's when people started to ask, did Sydney crash the inner circle, or was she carefully placed? And if she was invited, how come Lauren didn't know her that well? And if she wasn't invited, how did she get that close? And why was Jeff making investments behind his new brides? Back, not just any investment, but one that echoed a storm Lauren had faced before it was polished. It was pretty and it wore designer shoes, but make no mistake, it was a storm, and last time it came with the Kardashian logo. Now listen, this isn't gossip, it's pattern recognition. Because years ago, Lauren faced another silent siege, and that siege was led by one of the most strategic women in Hollywood, Kim Kardashian. Say what you want, but Kim doesn't move without a plan, and her plan involved Jeff Bezos. She didn't just smile for pictures, she angled for funding, for attention, for access. Jeff even awarded her the Amazon Fashion Innovation Trophy, the first of its kind. Some called it a business move, others whispered it looked like something else, and Lauren watched all of it from the sidelines, holding her ground, guarding her man, her image, her future. And now, just as she sealed her legacy with a wedding that rivals royal affairs, here comes Sydney, younger, hungrier, armed with a Prime Video deal and the kind of press glow that makes everyone stop and scroll. And beauty, Lauren's no stranger to these games. She survived the Kardashians, remember, and that's no small feat, because the Kardashians don't just arrive. They infiltrate, they influence, they turn hustle into empire, and Kim wasn't shy about it. She wanted the Amazon money for Skim, she wanted the endorsement, the partnership, and maybe, just maybe more. She had the ambition to match the moment, but Jeff didn't fold and Lauren held the line, and now that same line is being tested again, but this time with someone who looks less threatening, more innocent, yet just as intentional. Sydney's not walking in with headlines, she's drifting in with compliments, collaborations, contracts. She's being smart, quite deliberate. She's not storming the gates, she's charming the guards. And suddenly the billionaire who said I do is saying yes to lingerie that his bride never approved in. And so what's really going on? Why was Lauren blindsided? Is this about business, or is there something deeper, emotional, strategic? Perhaps even personal. We're not saying Sydney did anything wrong. There are no scandals, no evidence, no whispers of romance, just tension, the kind of tension that doesn't make headlines but makes people shift in their seats. Lauren's people say she's reworking her defense strategy, not because she fears Sydney, but because she understands the stakes. She didn't survive Kim to be undone by lace and lip gloss. This time, Lauren's not just watching, she's preparing. She knows proximity is power, and Sydney's proximity is getting closer by the day. And as all this unfolds, there's one thing everyone seems to forget. Lauren's not new to this. She's weathered storms, she's flown through actual space, she's met presidents, dodged scandals, laughed at gossip, and still stood center stage next to one of the most powerful men alive. And now she's being tested not by betrayal, but by strategy, by the slow, silent encroachment of ambition masked as innocence. So if you're asking if Lauren Sanchez is worried, don't. She's not panicking, she's planning, and what she does next might just be the most compelling chapter yet, because the battle for influence isn't loud, it's quiet. And right now, Lauren Sanchez isn't losing, she's watching, and she's learning from a new kind of player. And then so, what does that mean for Jeff Bezos, for Sydney Sweeney, for the empire Lauren built? Is this a passing phase or the start of something deeper? And how long before we see who's really running the show? We don't know yet, but we're watching closely, and so is Lauren Sanchez now picture the silence that follows a celebration. The quiet hum of reality settling in after the world has watched your fairy tale unfold. Lauren Sanchez stood at the center of it all, glowing in a Venice sunset, walking beside Jeff Bezos as the new symbol of modern power and partnership, and for a moment it felt final secure, as if the crown she had earned could no longer be touched. But power never rests, it shifts, and just as the echoes of wedding bells faded, a ripple disturbed the calm, and her name was Sydney Sweeney, not with a scandal, not with a secret, but with a move so strategic, so quietly potent that it shook Lauren. Without a word, because when Jeff Bezos decided to invest in Sydney's lingerie line, it wasn't just business, it was a message. And Lauren reportedly didn't see it coming, not because she wasn't watching, but because she thought the storm had passed. After all, she had already fought off a bigger storm years before with sharper heels and louder PR, the Kardashians. You see, this isn't just a story about money or ambition. It's about the nature of power, who holds it, who wants it, and who understands. At best, Lauren Sanchez is no stranger to strategy. She has flown helicopters into wildfires. She has built her own media legacy. She has turned her life into a statement of reinvention, but in this moment, even she seemed blindsided, because the threat didn't come in loud and brazen like Kim Kardashian had. It came dressed in silk, smiling, quietly walking through the doors. Lauren had spent years keeping shut. It came as Sydney Sweeney, an actress with talent, yes, but more importantly with timing. The kind of timing that could shift perception and steal attention, and Lauren knew better than anyone that, in their world, attention is currency. Sources say the lingerie deal was more than a check. It was a symbol, it was an invitation into the Bezos circle, a circle Lauren had carefully protected. Sydney went from collaborator to headline maker, from working with Prime Video to becoming a financial priority for Jeff Bezos, and the internet noticed suddenly. People were asking why Sydney? Why now, and how close was too close? Because when Lauren looked around her wedding guest list and saw Sydney sipping champagne, some say her smile faltered just for a second, not because of jealousy, but because of recognition, because she had seen this pattern before in another woman's face and another woman's ambition. Kim Kardashian had spent years building bridges toward Bezos. She lobbied for a skim, she showed up, she played the game, and when she didn't get what she wanted, she didn't just fade away. She pivoted, redirected, but the attempt was real, and Lauren had outlasted her, and now she saw something eerily familiar in Sydney. Not the moves, but the positioning. Sydney wasn't overt, she was quiet. She let the headlines come to her. She didn't have to pursue Jeff because he came to her, and that's what made it more dangerous. Because if you can attract power without asking for it, you might just know how to keep it. But let's be fair, Sydney Sweeney didn't do anything wrong, at least not publicly. She didn't cross a line or make a play. What she did was exist in the right place at the right time with the right product and the right look, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all it takes to trigger pure, to raise eyebrows, to plant seeds of doubt. And in Lauren's world, doubt is dangerous, because Lauren Sanchez has never built her identity on accident. Every move has been earned, carved out of resistance and resilience. And now the question was, could she be replaced, not as a wife, but as a symbol? Because once the world sees someone new as part of your story, they begin to rewrite your role. Jeff Bezos has always been a calculated man. He doesn't invest without reason. He doesn't signal without meaning. And so people are asking, what does this investment mean? Does it mark a shift in focus? Is Sydney becoming a new face of his ventures, or is it simply a business deal made without consultation? And if so, what does that say about the partnership between Lauren and Jeff? Because in their world, perception is power, and being blindsided even by business is a red flag, not because of what it is, but because of what it suggests. And Lauren knows better than anyone that silence can speak louder than words. So what does Lauren do now? Does she speak out? Does she stay silent? Does she tighten her circle or widen it and bring Sydney in to control the narrative, to diffuse the rumors? Or does she let the world wonder as she plans her next move? Because make no mistake, Lauren is planning. She didn't climb to the top of this ladder just to watch someone else step onto the next rung without challenge. This isn't about insecurity, it's about instinct. And right now her instincts are on high alert, because she's been here before, and last time she walked away with the win. Sydney may be the rising star, but Lauren is the reigning queen, and if history has taught us anything, it's that queens don't abdicate, they reinforce their thrones. And right now the throne may feel a little more exposed, a little more tested, but it is far from vacant. And as long as Lauren is in that seat, every new arrival is being watched, not with fear, but with strategy. Because if this is a new game, she's already learning the rules and preparing To write her own, and Jeff Bezos might be the investor, but Lauren is the architect, and she is not done building. Lauren Sanchez had every reason to believe the hardest part was over. The press had hailed her wedding as a triumph, a fairy tale designed for the modern power couple, their love wrapped in billions, their vows exchanged under Italian skies, her journey from news anchor to aviation queen to Mrs. Hood. Bezos was complete and the world applauded, but now in the quiet moments when the dresses had been packed away and the headlines faded, she began to feel it. Again, that creeping sensation that something was shifting, not crashing, but shifting, and when the name Sydney Sweeney began to echo through the corridors of speculation, Lauren didn't flinch, but she listened, because this wasn't just about another actress making headlines. This was about proximity, presence, and patterns. And the one thing Lauren understood better than anyone was that power attracts orbit, and orbit attracts ambition. Jeff Bezos didn't accidentally fund Sydney's lingerie brand. He didn't stumble into that deal, he chose it. And that choice, whether innocent or intentional, sent a ripple through Lauren's world, a ripple that felt eerily similar to the one she faced when Kim Kardashian had quietly maneuvered her way toward the Amazon throne. Back then, it was about skims, about deals, about visibility, and despite all of Kim's clout, Lauren held her ground, not by force but by finesse. She didn't block the storm, she absorbed it, and now she faced a different kind of storm. One that came without noise, without notoriety. Just a gentle wind with a dangerous potential. Sydney wasn't crashing the gates, she was being welcomed in, and while she played coy at the wedding, said she didn't know them, that didn't quite align with the image of her sipping champagne at a table close enough to feel the heat of Jeff's spotlight. Insiders said Lauren didn't just see Sydney, she noticed her, and not because of jealousy, not because of competition, but because of caution, because the only thing more dangerous than a threat you see coming is the one that smiles at you while it arrives. And when Sydney left Venice, she didn't leave empty-handed. She left with a narrative, with attention, and most importantly with investment, and the internet did the rest. The speculation, the edits, the side-by-side comparisons, all painting a picture that maybe, just maybe, Sydney was inching toward his face. Lauren had worked years to secure, but here's what people forget: Lauren isn't fighting for love, she already has it. She isn't fighting for money, she's surrounded by it. What she's protecting is position, and position is earned, not gifted. She's protecting the respect, the authority, the unspoken understanding that she is not simply Jeff Bezos' wife, she is his partner, his strategist, his equal. And when a new player walks into that arena, no matter how soft her tone or graceful her entrance, the calculus changes, and so Lauren is recalculating, not panicking, not spiraling, but watching. And while the public wonders if this is déjà vu, if this is Kim all over again, just in a younger form with less business armor and more buzz, the truth is deeper. Sydney is not trying to be Kim, she doesn't have to. She just has to exist in the right moment, and that moment is now, with Bezos backing her brand and headlines following her every step. Sydney has become a symbol, not of scandal, but of shift, and shift is what Lauren doesn't take lightly. So now the game begins again. Quiet, polite, strategic. Sydney says she's focused on fashion, but her proximity to power speaks louder than her product. And Lauren, well, Lauren's once again at a crossroads. Does she bring Sydney in close and claim the narrative, or does she draw the line and defend her orbit? Either way, one thing is certain: Lauren didn't get here by being passive, she got here by reading between the lines and right now those lines are being redrawn with lace ribbon and a billionaire's signature on the checkbook. Story now isn't just about Sydney Sweeney or Lauren Sanchez or even Jeff Bezos, about the invisible war of perception, the kind fought not with statements but with silences, not with confrontations but with calculated choices. Because when you live at the highest level of visibility, every move you make echoes, every silence you hold amplifies. And now Lauren finds herself once again adjusting her lens, refocusing, not because she's unsure but because she knows the weight of what silence can do. People aren't just asking whether Sydney is a threat, they're asking why Lauren didn't know. Why the woman who flew beside Bezos into space, who shared with him the most intimate of victories and the most public of unions, why she would be surprised by his investment. And that is where the tension begins to stretch, because if the headlines are true, if Lauren truly didn't see the investment coming, it wasn't just a personal blindside, it was a professional crack, a signal to the world that maybe her grip on the Bezos empire wasn't as absolute as it once appeared. And to Lauren, who has lived her life turning obstacles into origin stories, that is not a narrative she's willing to allow to grow. She didn't marry into power, she met it on the battlefield, matched it, and built with it. And now she must decide what to do when her own partner makes a move that places someone else inside their frame, inside their story. And here's what complicates it further: Sydney isn't the villain in this story. She isn't playing dirty, she's simply playing well, and in Hollywood sometimes that's even more dangerous. Because the public loves to believe in the innocent disruptor, the young bright star who isn't asking for the spotlight, but keeps ending up in it. And Sydney's rise has been swift: her fashion choices, her presence on red carpets, her quick ascent. From character actress to cover girl, it all paints a picture of someone who knows exactly what to do when opportunity walks in, wearing a tuxedo and holding a pen. And that's what makes this so hard for Lauren, because this time the shift isn't being fueled by scandal or betrayal, it's being fueled by optics, and optics are harder to fight. They're quieter, more slippery, and often more enduring. The whispers now aren't just about Jeff and Sydney. They're about what kind of future Lauren is protecting and what kind of past she's trying not to repeat, because make no mistake, she remembers how long Kim Kardashian danced around Jeff's orbit, how many events they attended, how many business proposals floated back and forth, and how very close Kim came to embedding herself in the Bezos brand before Lauren locked down her own place at the table. And now here comes Sydney, not with the same moves, but with familiar timing. And while the audience may not see the parallels, Lauren does, because history rarely repeats exactly, it echoes, it mutates, it shows up in different clothes with different smiles. And if you're not careful, you mistake the pattern for a coincidence, and Lauren has never believed in coincidence. Not at this level, not when they're...
Private jets have arrived in Venice this week, and it's Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's wedding, and that's the reason. And the invite to the grand gala is a coveted one, only about 250
plays, because one thing about Lauren is that she doesn't shout, she shows, she doesn't react, she responds. And if the world is waiting for a showdown, they may be disappointed. What they're more likely to get is a masterclass in image control and narrative precision, and what it means to keep your throne, not by fighting in public, but by securing every angle behind the scenes. And as for Jeff, well, he may be funding lingerie, but he's also learning the delicate balance of public and private decisions, because an unchecked checkbook in the wrong direction can do more than fund a brand. It can shake the ground beneath the brand he's already built. And Sydney, whether she meant to or not, has now become a name that carries more than a label. It carries the weight of speculation. And Lauren, the woman who once watched Kim circle and fade, is now watching this new wave and deciding whether to let it break or redirect it entirely. Because when you marry into power, that's one thing, but when you become the power, that's another. And Lauren Sanchez has never been just a plus one. She is the headline, the force, and the standard. And right now, every camera, every whisper, and every step is watching how she writes the next chapter. And now, as the spotlight begins to shift once more, as the internet scrolls faster and whispers louder, as Sydney Sweeney's name trends beside words like lingerie line and billionaire investment, and as Lauren Sanchez's silence grows more curious than comforting, we find ourselves standing at the edge of a story that is still being written, because what began as a quiet move in the business section has transformed into something far more riveting and personal, not just for the people involved, but for the millions watching from their screens, wondering what it all means and what will come next. Lauren Sanchez, the woman who has lived her life on her own terms, who has broken ceilings, both literal and cultural, who stepped into a world where most women are expected to be accessories and instead became the architect, is now staring down a moment that could define not her relationship, but her reign. This isn't about Sydney anymore, not really. It never was entirely, because Sydney represents something much more subtle and therefore more impactful. She's the idea that the future is always knocking, that power is never permanent, and that no matter how secure you think your place is, there is always someone younger, newer, hungrier, and maybe even more strategically placed, waiting for an opening, not to take your place, but to be considered for a place of their own. And that realization can shake even the most powerful among us. But here's where the story takes its most interesting turn, because Lauren Sanchez isn't shaken, she's shifting, she's realigning. She's stepping into the next version of herself, because the true mark of power isn't just surviving the storm, it's learning how to build in the eye of it. And Lauren has done this before. She knows how to move, how to wait, how to let others make noise while she makes moves. She knows that in the end, legacy isn't built on moments, it's built on momentum. And while everyone is watching to see if Sydney Sweeney is the next big disruption, Lauren is reminding the world that endurance is more valuable than hype, that partnership is more profound than proximity, and that the woman who keeps showing up when the narrative changes is the one rewriting it completely. Because yes, maybe Sydney is the new name in the room, and yes, maybe Jeff Bezos made a choice without consulting his partner, and yes, maybe the internet is busy stitching together timelines and tension, but while all of that unfolds, Lauren is still here, still leading, still defining, still holding the quiet kind of power that doesn't demand attention but commands respect. And if you listen closely past the headlines, past the speculation, past the pretty pictures and whisper campaigns, you'll hear something else too. Not fear, not jealousy, not rage, but calculation, the quiet clicking of a mind that never stops strategizing because she knows something the rest of us are still learning, that power doesn't panic, it pivots. And queens don't collapse, they conquer. So whether Sydney Sweeney becomes the face of a brand or just another headline on the timeline, the real story is this: Lauren Sanchez isn't just watching from the front row, she is watching from above. And when you've flown high enough to see the whole board, no move is ever really a surprise and no victory is ever truly final until you decide the game is over.